This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
What's up, Power Athlete Nation? It's that time. We got a hell of a show for you. As always, I'm joined with Luke Summers and Steve Playtech. What's up, guys?
What's going on?
What's up, Denny?
We got John Welbourn on the show. What's happening,
Hey.
John? And we got a special guest, Tom Incledon. How you doing?
Excellent. How are you guys today?
We're good. We're rolling. We been having some pretty good conversations off the air.
For about 9 minutes.
Yeah. The most interesting one though is Luke's awesome Halloween costume. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, man. I gotta give you props because when I first saw the picture, I kind of thought that wasn't Hacksaw. And then one quick Google and you pretty much nailed it. So I apologize.
The costume's been 8 months in the making of no haircut, and then I haven't shaved for maybe 2 months. And it's perfect. I mean, people legit came up for my autograph thinking I was the Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Nice. Is the haircut
What do you do for the ghostly white legs?
Well, I'm sorry I don't wear my Speedo in public. That's a
Denny, why did you notice that?
I saw the
Look at
picture.
wrong stuff, Denny.
Crazy.
So what else is new, guys?
Well, we had the morning crew Saturday morning at 8:03. We just have like 2 classes, and the morning WOD was Cal Sue.
Nice.
Everybody thanks me for writing that one for them to do. I capped it at 35 minutes. 2 people attempted the RX weight. You guys put 135 out there. For women, I just have them go at 95. And they weren't able to finish in under 35 minutes. The people who finished scaled the weight down to, like 115, 75 or something like that.
And for those who don't know, Kalsu is 100 thrusters per time at 135. And every minute you have to do 4 burpees? 5 burpees.
5 burpees.
At the top every minute, 5 burpees, stop wherever you're at, and then continue. That's mine, dude. That's I hate that workout.
Dude, so for the people who tried it RX and ran out of time, at 35 minutes, that's 175 burpees you end up doing on top of whatever amount of thrusters. I think the one girl got like 86 thrusters and the guy got in the 70s. So that's a shit ton of work to do.
Yeah,
but it's a great workout. Both the CrossFit Football Hero WODs are fucking awesome. I mean, Tillman will kick right in the balls.
Yeah. Kasu's like probably.
Yeah, there's one more. There's also the Winchester workout.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I think I want to say it's overhead walking lunges. Is that it? It's I'd have to look it up. We haven't programmed it in a while. We got to probably pull some of those out, but it is what it is. So let's get this thing rolling. With no further ado, let's ask Dr. Tom to introduce himself and give a little history, and I'll tell you how I met Dr. Tom and how our relationship's kind of gone in the last couple of years, and then kind of what are the things he's been working on. And I really think the Power Athlete Nation would be super interested to hear what Dr. Incledon has to say. And he's spoken at several CrossFit football seminars, and people always seem to really like him. So, Tom, can you give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. I'm a Bronx boy. Grew up in the Bronx, New York City. I grew up extremely, extremely poor, and the significance of that is the only thing I really know how to do is work very hard. And somehow from that humble beginning, I've managed to go to schools around the United States, get 5 degrees in different fields, and I've had the really, really cool pleasure and unique opportunity of working with brightest minds in exercise physiology and sports performance. These are, MDs, MD PhDs, and in some of the basic science areas, guys have won Nobel Prizes. So just people that really think differently than the average person. And the core focus of, common thing all these guys had is they just wanted to figure out how to make people into freaks in a way that was efficient, quick, and maybe inexpensive in some cases. Like if you're responsible for programming thousands of people, you may not be able to have a ton of money that you could spend on each individual person. And got a chance to publish all kinds of cool studies when I was at Penn State. We studied, all kinds of ways to train the human body with weights that would affect hormone responses. We published all kinds of data on how to improve the body's ability to produce testosterone. And for my own selfish purposes, I used every bit of data I could so I could jack up and maximize my own testosterone levels. So it was really fun being in the lab at that point, because every day, you come in, there's a new research project, and we're trying to piggyback into some of these studies so we can figure out ways how to, increase our own testosterone levels. One of the cool claims to fame of the lab at that point is we claim to have the world's strongest sports science lab. Everybody there could squat at least 500, bench at least 300, and deadlift at least 500. And for a bunch of lab geeks that were not on steroids, those are pretty good numbers, compared to a lot of our other partners in other labs who maybe weren't lifting anything, at that level. Then from Penn State, went to University of Miami, got a chance to meet some really bright guys in the medical sciences departments there. And I did all kinds of really cool studies on individual muscle fibers, and we could actually see at a molecular and a cellular level the cool things that creatine and other dietary supplements could do to actually help people get bigger, faster, stronger. And today, I have a center in Arizona, in Scottsdale, Arizona, where we got all kinds of freaky gadgets and, training equipment to figure out all kinds of ways that we could help our clients reach their goals. So that's kind of, a little bit of a summary of everything.
Nice.
Tom, it's nice to hear you say that you guys are the strongest lab. Being a college professor, we have an exercise science department, and oftentimes students will ask me, like, first they have dumb questions like, do you work out? And then like, what do you eat or whatever? And they're like, well, that's not what I learned in exercise science. And I always say to them, well, go look at your exercise science professors and then look at me. And they're all like fat turds. You know what I mean? Like, probably couldn't run a mile without dying, and certainly couldn't squat anything more than a bar.
Sure. Back when, so I have 23 years of college education, and I say that not to brag, but just to show you my ability to handle pain, because that was not a pleasurable experience for being in school for that long. But one of the things that struck me very, very early on in my academic career was that, I was training with some of the strongest guys in the world. And these guys, for the most part, they're not going to impress you with these, they didn't have PhDs. They weren't super intelligent, but they knew how to get bigger and stronger. What they had was a lot of practical experience. They may not be able to articulate the molecular mechanisms involved in, transmitting information from one part of the body to another. But when I would go to school, I would have my professors say things like, you cannot change ATP levels, and you can't, extra protein won't help you add muscle. And then I go and these guys are like, well, take creatine, it'll increase ATP and you'll get more reps, or eat this protein, you'll add more muscle. And, you couldn't help but look at these guys were getting bigger, they were getting stronger. And I got my professors saying it won't work. And that's what kind of, I followed what some of the athletes that I was training with were doing, because you could see the results in front of you. What I learned, though, was that the professors, they were approaching the problem from a different perspective, and because they did not have real world experience doing stuff that the athletes were doing. So when they would approach a problem, let's say training, they didn't quite do it exactly the way that someone might do it that was actually working out. So they may be involved in research, and it may be valuable, but it might have been from a perspective that maybe wasn't very practical. So as an example, there's been guys that have done studies on how to take fast twitch muscle fibers and make them slower. And they can show, we can make this fast twitch fiber convert into a slower twitch fiber. But what athlete wants that to happen? Everybody wants it the opposite. Even a marathon runner still wants to move faster than the guys he's competing against. So the practical application of some of the data or the research that's being done sometimes, it's guys that have good intentions, but maybe they don't understand because they don't work out themselves. And that's where I think, your better research groups, they live it, they breathe it in their own lives, and they do research on top of it. They have a practical understanding as well as a scientific understanding, and they could, put it all together, maybe a little bit better than guys that are just one or the other.
Yeah, definitely. A purely academic approach as opposed to, like you said, an academic and an applied approach is only half the battle.
Yeah. So
I like how you've talked about creatine, because believe it or not, even last night, I still get people who will ask me like what my opinion is on creatine. They're still like uncertain of it. Some people think it's right up there with like an anabolic steroid, and there just seems to be a lot of like misconception on that. And creatine, I've used it since like 93 or something. When it first started coming around. I like how you've talked about it. It sounds like, you got some experience with that, and it's definitely a good thing. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. The one thing I will, it's funny because this morning I had a medical colleague ask me some stuff about creatine because he gets some questions in his practice and he wasn't quite sure how to respond. And so I'll say structurally, creatine is an amino acid, but functionally, it resembles more the function of glucose or carbohydrate in the human body. So like if you eat some carbohydrate, and the body somehow converts that carbohydrate into glucose, and glucose goes into the muscle cell and draws water into it, that is all considered a good thing. But somehow, when you ingest a food that contains creatine or creatine supplement, and that creatine travels from digestion, it gets into the blood, so you have absorption taking place there, and then it's transported to, let's say, a muscle cell. And as creatine gets inside the muscle cell, it goes through a process called phosphorylation, where basically the body just adds a larger molecule. So now you have creatine phosphate, and that draws water into the cell. Somehow that's considered a bad thing. That's actually a very healthy biological response. It's something you want to occur. And years ago, there were all kinds of ridiculous statements that we had to address with some of the different boards and research groups I was part of. One was that creatine was responsible for some deaths of some athletes. We investigated it. The athletes were not even taking creatine. It was just poor coaching, and they wanted to blame something else other than the coaches stepping up and admitting they were abusing their athletes. And two, we heard a lot about creatine-inducing muscle cramping. So we did muscle fiber studies where we actually pulled muscle fibers out of human beings before, during, and after taking creatine. And there's no doubt if your creatine stores are not optimal, which most people, they're not going to be optimal. When you start taking creatine, there is muscle fiber hypertrophy, defined as the fibers, just the cross-sectional area, got larger. So if we define it as hypertrophy, that's what happened. Whether it's water or protein strands or something else, doesn't matter. The fibers got bigger. And then the other thing is that people taking creatine actually cramped up less than people that were not taking creatine. So now when you compare what's found in a research setting, and now you look at what's happening, guys will always work with a lot of athletes that have played baseball and football at a professional level. And they'll say, I took this product and I cramped up. They're not doing quality controlled study designs. They're self-experimenting where they tried something. They don't have their same body in the exact same environment, taking the same product one day and the same conditions another day and not taking a product. They don't have that type of comparison. They just simply know maybe they didn't cramp recently. They took something and they started cramping. So you might conclude, this is causing me to cramp. But one of the things is that the products on the market right now, they contain so much more than just creatine in them. And one of the possibilities is if you have like 50 things in one formula and you throw it into the stomach, you're going to change all kinds of osmotic forces. You could actually pull water out of the blood into the lumen of the digestive tract. So if you're getting, if you're pulling water out because you got a variety of amino acids and other types of substances, it might induce dehydration, but that's not and which may cause cramping. That's not a problem with creatine per se. It's because you had a bunch of idiots selling supplements that claim they know what they're doing and they really don't. They're just throwing glorified stuff in a product, putting a fancy label on it, getting people to buy it. So that's not a problem of creatine per se. That's more misbranding, mismarketing. You got people saying, we have all these biochemists. You call the company, you say, who's the biochemist? They don't even know what you're talking about because they can't even spell the word. So you realize then it's not a creatine per se. It's people are being deceived as far as what the benefits of the product are.
I know. I had, I hate going into GNC stores in this area, because it's, as soon as you walk in, they're just all over you and they want you to buy all their supplements. And some days when I am forced to go in there, I'll be like, all right. And I'll just kind of call the guy out. These supplements are so great. Walk up, turn it around, start naming off everything that's on the label. And half of it's just loaded with sugar. So it tastes good, and like you were saying, if there's 50 different ingredients in, some kind of drink that is supposed to like transfer the creatine into your, cells quicker, all the chemicals that are in that drink are like sugar, all kinds of crap, carbs and stuff that you don't even need. It's a joke of what they're putting out there on the market and saying that, a person needs to achieve, whatever their goals in fitness are.
Hey, can I change gears real quick? Because I think that, creatine's awesome. And I think anybody who's power athlete, John talks about this sort of ad nauseum. But one of the things, Tom, that I wanted to ask you about, and hopefully you'll talk about for Power Athlete Nation, is John had mentioned it maybe in like one of our conversations about having you on the show that you're interested in cartilage regeneration. And I'm being old and beat up and falling apart. As I think probably some of the CrossFit football folks are. I would love to hear some of the new science on this that you have talked about.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for sending that lead in because, so first, this is something I'm really passionate about because in my own history, I was a really strong athlete. I had to really generate a lot of force. I maybe wasn't the fastest, most explosive type of athlete. I come from a time where you would just.
Tom, how strong?
Again?
How strong were you? Give me some numbers. One time you told me, didn't you have like a 900 plus rack pull and like some other numbers? So give us some background so people just don't think you're an egghead.
So I pulled a 945 for a triple and a deadlift. I'd say the bar, the bottom of the plate from the floor was maybe 6 inches, maybe less. At that point, bar bows a lot, and so when a weight actually starts to move up, there's a lot of flexing of the bar, if you will.
Did you say you pulled 945 pounds for a triple?
Yeah, and I would have gotten more reps, except bar as it was bowing, the plates fell off. We couldn't get collars on the bar.
The problem we all wish that we had.
Yeah. So I would say that I've bent a lot of bars and Smith machines over the years and got invited not to train at the gym anymore. I was like, hey, how did I know they had fragile equipment? They didn't put a sign on it. And I was always good at deadlifting. Ever since I was like 12 or so, I knew I could pull a lot of weight. I think before I was 15, I already pulled almost 400 pounds. And by the time I was maybe 17 or 18, I was pulling over 500 or 600 pounds. So I was always a good puller. In terms of strongman stuff, I ran, I think it was either, I think it was about 80 feet. I ran with 275 in each hand in about 10.6 seconds. So that was a pretty good time at that point. But now you got some of these freaks from Finland and stuff that crushed that. I did I set an American record in an axle press where we had a stainless steel type of bar. So, it's slippery and very smooth. It was only 200 pounds, but it was really difficult to get into position. You had to take it from the ground, clean it, or get it up to your clavicle or shoulders in one, somehow, didn't matter how. And then you would push it overhead. I think I got like 22 or 23 reps. And I've done, I think, about 310 in log press. When I was under 200 pounds and over 200 pounds, I locked out 200 kilos in log press. So the difference, the extra mass in my body weight, it helped my log press tremendously. So there's been, I think, I did a reverse bench about 440 pounds and a front squat a little bit more than 200 kilos. So I've done, some different weird lifts over the years, but I've always been fascinated with strongman type lifts, all around lifting. I've done, I set a world record in a one arm snatch. I did 187 pounds with my left hand, and I was trying to break the world record with my right hand, which was 100 kilos. But I injured my wrist that day, and so I had to switch. And so my goal was to set a record with my right hand. I jacked up my wrist, so I had to settle for setting a record with my left hand. So, but I've got the pleasure, though. Maybe the better part is I trained with Magnus for Magnuson. I've seen Kazmaier work out. Like, I've worked out with Mark Henry. Some really strong people in my lifetime. Ed Cohen. These guys are freaks in nature. So, as much as I've lifted, it's nothing compared to when you're working out with these guys. And you see they lift and how effortlessly they lift it. I watched Ed Cohen start a training program. He pulled it was 799 pounds. He pulled it 6 times, took a 2-minute rest, and then pulled it 2 more times. So he basically got roughly 800 pounds for 8 reps without a belt. Okay. So, and no straps. I don't think he had straps at the time, and it was just, that's when he's got like another 12 weeks, right, of training. So, he's going to pull a hell of a lot more than 800 pounds at the end of the cycle. So those are the kinds of the cool things I've had the fun of dealing with in my life.
Nice. All right. So it gives a little background, and the cartilage stuff is really important. Steve's interested in it, but this has been in the, over 10 years that Tom and I have been friends. This has been pretty much a weekly, if not, multiple time a week conversation we've been having for almost a decade about, what is the most cutting edge way to not only rehab our injuries, but repair cartilage and kind of fix and really this deal about regenerating the body. So, Tom, you could take it and hopefully we can summarize some of the, it's amazing to think of when you called me this one time and talked about this thing called PRP to where we are kind of presently now. It's pretty wild, huh?
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. So first thing I'll share with is when I was at my strongest for deadlifting, I remember one day working out and I could feel my bones sliding against each other I'm talking specifically like in my knee joints. And it was not a natural feeling. It almost felt like butter had melted and something was sliding on a plate. That's the best way I could explain it. And even though I was strong, I knew something was wrong somewhere. And I just knew that if I keep going the direction I was going, I'm going to hurt myself to a point where, there's no point of no return. And so I started looking into some things about cartilage, mostly because I had a feeling something was wrong, but I didn't really have the quantitative or qualitative data to say what's going on inside my joints. And at that point, most of my coaches just said I was tight, I was inflexible. No one, had ever diagnosed me with arthritis. And then as I started getting MRIs, X-rays, and all different types of scans with ultrasound and other methods, I started finding I had maybe decades of damage in my joints. It just never hurt. And whether it was because of the coaches that had taught me how to block out pain, whether that was taken too far to an extreme, whether I just don't have a good awareness for that type of pain, I don't know. But I didn't realize all the damage I had generated in my own body through my own extreme training methods. And so that's what kind of got me personally motivated to say, all right, what's happening when we do heavy loading? And one of the things I learned is that when you do a heavy workout, the cartilage in your ankle, the cartilage in your knee, the cartilage in your hip, your elbow, your shoulder, it's not, we tend to refer to it as articular cartilage and think of it as all the same type of material, but it's actually not. Stuff in the cartilage in the ankle is very different than the cartilage in other parts of the body, which is why it's rare. It's a little bit more rare that you would hear of someone having ankle arthritis. You typically hear about, knee and hip much more. You may hear about shoulder. You don't hear about elbow arthritis as often, even though quantitatively arthritis in the elbow joint and the knee joint is about the same. So if we were to measure it from scannings or images of people, they both have the same incidence, yet how many people complain about elbow arthritis? It's almost nobody. And one of the things that struck out about me is, okay, what's different about the elbow versus the knee? And it's low, just the way we are positioned, whether we're sitting, lying, or standing, the elbow is typically in a position that it's unloaded, sort of hanging at the side in some particular joint angle. Whereas your knee, even when you're seated, there's still some type of load that's being transmitted through the knee. Certainly not as much as when you're standing, but enough that there's like a constant wear effect. So I started looking at methods of unloading the joint. I started talking to doctors from around the world, and a few things that had popped up is that the areas where the facilities where I supposedly had really good outcomes, there was an unloading component. So essentially, they figured out that once you put the cartilage to a lot of stress, that by taking some of the load off the cartilage, it allows the body to repair some of the damage. So then I started looking at, well, let's say you do a heavy squat workout or heavy deadlift workout. How much time does it take the cartilage to actually heal or fight some of the inflammation from the mechanical frictional forces from the stress of that workout? And the way my interpretation of the data right now is that it's probably closer to 4 weeks. So a lower time, and that's assuming like a very heavy, like let's say 3 to 5 sets of triples. So you have sort of one extreme, heavy loading with heavy weight and lower reps takes time for the cartilage to heal, but submaximal levels of loading, they actually help the cartilage to heal faster. Now, a lot of this data is extrapolated from rodents. So how would you translate that to humans? No one's really measuring this or studying this, because if we figured out how to train people so that their cartilage can heal on its own, you now eliminate artificial joint replacements, you eliminate a lot of drugs. So there's not a strong financial motivation for people to study this. And typically the only groups that would study it would be people with a lot of money in their own research group, and you have a small subset of interest, or government, if they think, hey, if we can make a change that will save a lot of money in healthcare. So where I'm right now is I think there's definitely some ways that loading can be played with that could dramatically prolong the life of cartilage in people. The downside to that is I think that people will maybe not gain the same level of satisfaction from training. Like if you're used to handling heavy triples every so often, psychologically, there's almost like a dependence, or I wouldn't say addiction, but you get used to that and you look forward to it. And now all of a sudden, if you're removing that from the training, now you have other elements in terms of the satisfaction that people get from the training experience. So that's some stuff maybe on the mechanical loading side. In terms of strategies for tissue healing, on the nutritional side, some of the best things I've seen so far is vitamin mineral testing, making sure that whatever nutrients people are low in, that we actually can get them the right form. So let's say if a guy is low in vitamin D, his ability to heal in multiple areas of the body are going to be challenged, but specifically cartilage and bone. If he's calcium, and when I say a guy, I probably should have said man or woman, because there's no. I think in some ways, women that are producing estrogen have a slight protective edge over men. But as they get older, now as women are in their postmenopausal years, I think they may be at a greater risk than men in certain ways, because men typically have more muscle to contribute to joint stability. And once women lose some of the hormonal protection, I think the lack of muscle works against them for the joint stability, so they're at greater risk. And that's more my practical assessment than actually quoting stats from, injury rates and surveillance studies, from the field. So recently we've been doing, I guess maybe I should pause for a second and say, does anyone have any questions or any thoughts on that information I just shared?
No, sounds good. Let's go.
So, all right. So the next thing I was going to say is there's some really, really cool data on collagen peptides. Penn State, who where I attended school for a long time, they published 2 or 3 papers where they did MRI imaging of joints after about 90 days of collagen peptide supplementation, and they showed significant improvements in cartilage resurfacing or regeneration all over the body. The only thing I would say practically is, let's say your knee aches and because you have like some arthritis or some wear of cartilage in that joint. When you take these peptides, they're circulating around the whole body, so they're gonna go to wherever you have the greatest number of viable chondrocytes. Those are like your worker cells that could rebuild cartilage. So those guys will build cartilage faster, probably in a joint that you don't have any pain in. Now, that's still a good thing, but practically you didn't have pain, so you didn't know there was a problem, so you wouldn't know that it's no longer an issue because you can't feel anything. The joints that ache the most, chances are they have the lowest number of viable chondrocytes that can make more cartilage. So what I would think happens is people may take it, they don't feel it helping their good joints, and their bad joint maybe didn't feel better fast enough, because I know I'm very impatient. I want results yesterday. And I think a lot of guys, particularly power athletes, we're wired and trained to be explosive and powerful. We're not thinking endurance and long term. We're thinking instantly right now. But some of the data points to, 3 months or longer in terms of regenerating cartilage, and the joints have more damage. And that's assuming those joints have viable chondrocytes. When you get to a point like someone's bone on bone, you have other issues than just cartilage there. You have problems with subchondral bone. You have problems with maybe some of the bony tissue, maybe some of the ligaments, muscular tissue around a joint. So all of those areas have to be addressed. You can't just say, "I'll take some collagen peptides and magically everything else will happen." So outside of collagen peptides, you have things like there's a newer version of boswellia, and this has been shown to inhibit multiple inflammatory pathways. So sort of like the cyclooxygenase 2 pathway and the lipooxygenase pathway. It inhibits these multiple pathways that interfere with the body's ability to rebuild cartilage. And this form of boswellia by itself has been shown to increase cartilage thickness. So now imagine you have, boswellia, and now you have these collagen peptides. And there's some interesting data that when you combine with boswellia, maca, cat's claw, berberine, some other types of herbs, that you almost get like a synergistic effect where the combination of all these different things is better than the individual component herbs by themselves. So what I've been working on right now is there's not a single company that's combined all this research and made a product with the actual dosages used in the research. So you find companies that maybe have like a little bit of fairy dust of each ingredient. It's got the names, but it's too small to really, each individual ingredient to do anything. And you have other companies that maybe have a lot of one ingredient and nothing of the others. So what I'm trying to do is actually put all this stuff together in one product so that now people take one product that actually will work from the nutritional side to actually regenerate cartilage. But it may be, if it's a powder, it might be like a scoop. If it's capsules, it might be like 10 to 20 capsules at one time. So I don't know practically what the best form will be yet because I'm still trying to fine tune the formulation. But the data overall is pretty impressive.
Nice. So you
let me know when you come out with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep everybody abreast of it because it's one of those things that we try to think preventatively. Like I hear guys say, I'm taking glucosamine and chondroitin right now, even if I don't have any joint pain because I don't want to get joint pain later. And I think I admire the approach because it's sensible and it's smart. Let's prevent a health problem from occurring. The challenge though is that there's a lot of reasons why people may get arthritis or get some cartilage damage. On the mechanical side, let's just say I'm overtraining. Well, it doesn't matter how many supplements or drugs I take. I'm simply breaking down cartilage faster than I can repair it, right? So I could be doing injections daily. I can do all kinds of stuff in my joints. It's still not going to counter the fact that I'm overtraining. So there's got to be some sensibility on the loading side. And then on the other side, if I'm missing an essential building block, like if I'm low in boron or calcium or vitamin D or some other, maybe a mineral that's a component of the enzymes that help, with some of the collagen, protein synthesis that makes up the cartilage, I'm going to have an inability to repair cartilage because I'm missing a basic building block. And on a side note here, there was excellent data that was presented about 2 years ago at the American College of Sports Medicine annual meeting, where an MD and a PhD shared some data where, right now when people get their knee or their hip replaced, typically the orthopedic surgeon, does an MRI, says, hey, your joint is messed up. The only option I'm giving you is we're going to replace it. And then they replace it. And that's pretty much, they don't give a whole lot of guidance. They may give some physical therapy. So these guys said, with all the results that we see with nutrition enhancing muscle protein synthesis after exercise, what can we do from a nutritional perspective to enhance recovery and repair of tissue after joint replacement therapy? So essentially what they did is they gave really high dose essential amino acids. They gave sugar with it, and the rationale is they wanted to spike insulin as cheaply as possible. So it wasn't an expensive, intervention. And the insulin spike would drive amino acids into cells faster. And then they would have some precursors for cartilage, like collagen peptides, some hydroxylysine, hydroxyproline, things like that. So they put this stuff together and they just called it oral regenerative blend, ORB. That's just the name the docs came up with. It's nothing magical. But they gave it to the patients 3 times a day. And this is on top of the patients eating all their regular food. So all of this truly was a supplement. It was not in place of anything else. So a couple of things about that is normally, we don't think there's benefits of extra amino acids if you're eating enough protein. That's the more traditional medical approach. I think on the physiology side, certain sports nutritionists and physiologists that do research on amino acid, nitrogen balance, and exercise performance, they would disagree because they would say, well, there's individual and collective benefits of some of these amino acid formulas on tissue repair and recovery. But with the what this ORB blend did is accelerated repair of tissue. And this is now, I would say it's more bony tissue and muscular tissue, maybe some ligament tendon stuff. Like there's really not cartilage in those joints because the joint has been gone or replaced. But accelerated repair 4 to 8 times beyond people doing nothing at all. And so what it revealed is that nutrition is vital to repair of tissue. And so from that, we have data now that shows nutrition is important for muscle recovery, other guys from the nervous system, other guys now ligaments and tendons and cartilage. And now what these guys have shown is really bone after joint replacement surgery. So one of the things we've kind of tried to put together here is when we have people that are undergoing surgery or maybe trying to avoid surgery, is we do these really, high dose. I say high dose because you're talking about 45 grams of essential amino acids per day. So it's 15 grams 3 times a day on top of eating. So compared to what people generally do, that's a decent amount of extra amino acids, but it dramatically accelerates repair. It looks like of everything that's been studied so far. And part of it makes sense. You've given people building blocks they cannot make. So now you've eliminated the weak links for tissue synthesis for any tissue. So I realize I was a little bit maybe off the beaten path, but Tom, I thought it would be helpful.
Tom, would you recommend for the essential amino acids, like the post-workout, pre-workout, during the workout, what would you recommend them? And then, So I guess part of the challenge in answering that question is you got to know what else people are doing during the day. And the studies that have been done, remember, most of the time the subjects are fasted. So when they do a pre-workout, post-workout intervention, one of the things about that is not realistic is the subjects going into the studies, they have lower than normal amino acid levels in their blood because they've been fasting, right? Typically, we recommend most people, in a free living outside world, is you get nutrients in small amounts of nutrients over as many hours as possible, so you make your body bulletproof. So at any point in time, your body needs vitamin B1, bam, it's there. If it needs an essential amino acid, bam, it's there. So assuming that a guy is, let's say, doing some type of small meals 6 to 8 times a day, there may not even be a need for him to do pre and post workout nutrition because that person already has the nutrient levels in their blood based upon their normal diet. Now let's switch gears and say, well, this guy maybe didn't eat breakfast today and he's not eating for the workout. Well, now I think the pre-workout shake is going to be extremely important for helping that person to repair and to recover from training. So I would say in general, the data is about 6 to 10 grams of essential amino acids before training. And then immediately after training, you might do another 6 to 10 grams of essential amino acids. And then at some point after that, maybe I would say about an hour after the post-workout shake, maybe a solid meal or another shake. Depends on, if this is a scenario where you're trying to induce muscle hypertrophy or weight gain, then you want to sneak in as many feedings as possible with the understanding that there's some physiological limits. With our muscle cells, they have these doorways referred to as amino acid transporters. Those doorways are regulated by a number of variables, but one of the variables is the concentration of the given amino acid. So let's say you have this amino acid transporter for glutamine. Once glutamine inside the cell gets to a certain concentration, in other words, it increased, it kind of closes that doorway or that transporter is now blocked or no longer open. So it's closed. So then you're not going to be able to get more glutamine into that fiber. So because we have a lot of muscle fibers, then we kind of rationalize, well, I'll do a feeding now. I get whatever's open, and then I'll do another quick feeding in a little bit.
and whatever other fibers have their, transport mechanisms open, now I'll be able to hit those guys. What I would say, though, is that the bigger someone gets as far as muscle, the more extreme methods they have to employ in order to continue to grow, because there are cellular governing mechanisms that limit hypertrophy. The reason why you see guys like, Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler get to the sizes they do is a tremendous amount of drugs, but also a tremendous amount of overloading the body with so many different amino acids. You're maximizing every opportunity to get something into a cell.
Tom, is there a certain genetic aptitude to growth? I mean, think about this. You could take like two guys, for example, and you could probably give somebody the same schedule that like a Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler's on and still do the same feeding, and they would not get the same results. So obviously there has to be some mechanism for growth. I mean, certain people maybe have more muscle cells or more potential, but based on those doorways and something, I mean, it's always interesting when you start looking at people, at least that are kind of on the outside talking about steroids. They just think that, you take the steroids and instantly the results happen. And what's interesting is, there's plenty of guys down at the local gym that take drugs that never look the way they do or never really ever really reach the goals. And you have other guys that maybe do less, may do more and reach these phenomenal goals. And so is there just a certain genetic adaptation? Is there just something that becomes the kind of the barrier to entrance for this?
Yeah, well, keep in mind, Ronnie Coleman, using him as an example, his first Olympia, he was 10th. The way he looked then versus now is dramatically different. So on a genetic side of things, you have, what can your body do with you provide it? And I see 3+ pound guys that come in that are fairly lean and not on drugs, because I know, because I'm testing them, and they got all these things wrong with them, but they're still muscular and strong enough to play in the NFL, which, that's, no one else is going to, the average guy, he would be maybe, laying in bed exhausted, or he might be hurt or something, he wouldn't be at that level. I think what your body does with nutrients, then you have how your body responds to training. Maybe genetically, some guys just respond better to lower reps, heavy weight, and maybe other guys may just respond better to higher reps. So if depending on how you respond, if you're doing the other protocol, you're never going to demonstrate your muscular potential because you're not providing the stimulus that's ideal for your body. Then you have, when you start adding in drugs, you have receptor distribution, receptor subtypes. Like some, we think of androgen receptors, they're not all the same. Some are a little bit different than others. So then you have, how does someone respond to drugs? And it's clear as day. Some guys take a little bit of testosterone and they just get amazing muscular gains. Other guys take a lot of testosterone and nothing really seems to happen. So there's a lot of, I guess, areas along this whole process where genetics could have some impact.
Tom, didn't you do a study where some guys were taking some exogenous testosterone and that the effects were greatly diminished based on sleep patterns and also on nutrition?
Yes. There wasn't really a study per se. It was more so we have like a men's health clinic here. So basically we have guys that come to the clinic because they have some type of male health issue like erectile dysfunction and stuff like that. And a lot of these guys, they're already taking testosterone. They already may be taking Viagra, Cialis. So on paper, you think, okay, the guy's taking testosterone. He's taking Cialis or something. He should have no problems. And what I've been finding is, when we were trying to figure out what's going on, why isn't this guy? So he was put on this stuff by another doctor. He's not seen any progress. So he comes here because he's hoping we can figure out why he's having, we'll get an erection. And then we look at this stuff and, on paper, it looks like there should be no issues. And so we start looking at the production of a cytokine called interleukin-1. And when you don't get enough sleep, interleukin-1 goes up really high. Interleukin-1 is linked to all kinds of different cardiovascular diseases, from a stroke to a heart attack. It's linked to arthritis. And it's also linked to erectile dysfunction. So, the speculation we have is that, okay, even if a guy is taking testosterone, he's not getting enough sleep, the interleukin-1 would interfere with some of this. Another thing that interleukin-1 will mess up is there part of an inflammation interferes with the body's ability to utilize glucose. So we work with these guys to improve their sleep, and we work with them to improve their ability to clear glucose out of the blood. And almost 100% of these guys, once we achieve those two goals, like they have better sleep, and it doesn't really matter how we do it, but ideally we're doing it in a way that does not use drugs, because there's other problems from the drug use, like Ambien and stuff like that. But we get the sleep improved and the glucose clearance improved. They all say the same thing, better quality erections than they've experienced in the past. And they're just amazed at, the difference it makes with really not a whole lot of effort.
So better nutrition, better sleep, better erections.
That's the summary of it. Yes. Okay. I know it's shocking.
No, I mean, we've talked about this for years, and Steve is also a doctor of psychology, and we discussed sleep to a great extent, and even what the stuff that we went and did with Dr. Jin. I mean, there's a direct correlation to sleeping a certain amount of hours, sleeping within the circadian rhythm, and the body's ability to not only restore itself, the brain to cool. I mean, it's just more and more we get into this stuff that, and I shot you guys idea about, trying to, like, how do we basically repair our athletes? Like, what type of things are we going to do to, help our guys move forward? And, I really think it starts with sleep. I mean, the more and more I do research and the more information I get, I mean, it seems that, like, the biggest difference between, what people are doing in terms of, health, fitness and performance and gains really goes back to this sleep thing. And it's, it's going to be some information is going to come out like 20 years from now that it's like, dude, all this technology, all the things, all the distractions, whether it be TV and movies and internet, everything that we do is basically killing us because we're not sleeping like we used to.
Sure. Yeah. We do. One of our other areas that we deal with here is people that have excessive fatigue that's unexplained. And I can't tell you how many female executives that for a living they do a lot of reading of contracts online and stuff, like on their tablet or their notebook or their desktop computer. And, we do standard testing and everything seems okay. There might be some low vitamins or minerals. But I started coming across some papers on eye strain related fatigue. And one of the things that, the flicker rates of the monitors and the different displays that people read, when we were reading, paper, there's no flicker rate. Like you see the paper is what it is. It's not changing so many times, per cycle per second or something. And there's some data that our brain, even though visually we may not notice it, our brain can interpret some of this stuff. And the various nerves of the brain undergo some minor type of changes. I refer to some of that as plasticity. Some of the muscles around the eyes as they're trying to help with focusing. But the consequence of all of these with seemingly minor events is that people have difficulty with managing their energy levels. So it's almost like a leak of energy from their system, and they're so tired, but it interferes with their sleep in a way that even when they sleep, they don't wake up rested. And if I had to, I've looked at data on sleeping and exercise, nutrition, and if I had to quantify like importance for me, I would say intelligent exercise is probably got the single most significant value, because a lot of things from exercise can compensate for poor diet. And some of the things from exercise, when it's done appropriately, it could counter some of the negative consequences of poor sleep. So if I had to make a choice, work out or sleep, I'd probably work out. But ideally, if it was, perfect world, you would do the right amount of sleep for your body, the right amount of exercise, or appropriate type of exercise for your fitness goals, and then the right type of nutrition plan for your body's, nutrient and energy needs. But sometimes it's easier said than done, when you, with everyday life responsibilities. Not a whole lot of us can pick and choose when we're going to do things, whenever we want or something.
Huh?
Nice.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling tired and drained and just low energy, and it's your day to get to the gym, get to the gym. Get in there, I think, John, you wrote a Talk to Me Johnny about that.
Yeah, well,
if you don't go to the gym that day, it could be the day that you get your PR or something, right?
Well, I mean, there's always this problem, and you guys know this, that, have wives and kids and jobs and travel and all this other bullshit that seems to get in the way of what I really want to do, which is lift weights and fucking be jacked. And it's, it blows me away. Like I just had a really good training block the last, 6-7 weeks of training. And then all of a sudden I had to fly to Savannah, and I come home and, got home at 2:00 in the morning, and the kids woke me up at 6, and, had to finish all the tech stuff. And so I spent 3 days trying to go through and finish out all of our, payroll and all that. And by the time I get to the gym, it's back on Wednesday, and you go in and I have, I put 3 crappy workouts together, and then, the kid's birthday on that weekend. And it's like all of a sudden, it's just like an entire week just got melted. And, you're in an airplane and you're trying to eat. And thank God I pack all of our jerky and all the Well Food Co. stuff when I travel. And really that's what Well Food Company was designed for, was for travel snacks for the power athlete. And it just kind of fucks it all up. And what happened is I'm getting frustrated with that. And especially like training within a program. I'm not big on just random training. I'd like to have a clear defined goal that this is where I'm starting and this is where I'm going. And, but the problem is that you're not always going to, based on life's problems, and we always call it the life deload, like you need something to do. And so I think on Talk to Me Johnny, I kind of came up with 2 programs that I do. And it's kind of just 2 days that if I come in and things aren't right, or I'm, I find myself in a strange city with, and I don't know what to do, we kind of put together, there was 2 workouts that we had, and it's basically a big push, big pull thing. And you can get in and out of there in about, 45 minutes. And as long as I can get to do it, I know when we travel to Europe or any of the international stuff, I mean, our big thing is get off the plane, get the car, and go work out as fast as we can. And so we'll usually drive to the gym, work out, and then after that, just go get something to eat, and then hopefully go to the hotel and relax. Because I find that after sitting on an airplane, the last thing I want to do is work out, but it's actually the best thing I can do to get some sweat going and just kind of get that blood pumping. But I mean, it's funny. When I was playing in the NFL was such a great experience because it was the most selfish time in my life. I remember like getting up and like weighing myself in the morning, and if I was too light, I'd call the guy and or my training partner or whoever I was working with and be like, hey, I'm going to come in a little bit later. I want to eat a lot before I come in and lift weights. If I was tired, I would take a nap. In the off season, I took a nap between like 2 and 3 every single day. And if I was not feeling good that weekend, or if I was tired, I just relaxed. And, it was really good. I mean, I had the opportunity to work with guys like Tom for nutrition and diet, and it just was super selfish. But then all of a sudden you get out of the NFL, you start working, and, you have family, you have your kids, and you realize that, that doesn't pay the bills or doesn't really jive when your 2 little ones get up at 6 a.m. and, trying to get you up to go play on the piano. So, I tell you, so for their birthday, and Tom actually sent my girls some pretty good birthday gifts. I don't know if Tom even knew it. The gal.
I knew it.
It was pretty hilarious. The gal that runs Tom's office is pretty awesome. And all of a sudden we look and there's 2 presents for our girls for their birthday. So we're laughing. We open it up and like one was like these little like kind of I guess like little like mini sleeveless ski vests. And then little mini Ugg boots. And dude, we were laughing because the girls wear the Ugg boots like every day, and they're so excited because they see their mom wearing Ugg boots. And so now they all like Kate and the girls have their Ugg boots, and I just kind of shake my head and laugh. And I'm like, oh man, it starts so young. But somebody got my little girls. They got them a piano. So it's like a little like color coded like little kids piano. So I like kind of propped it up so they can play it and they stand. And they literally, I was sleeping the other morning. Like I got home real late. And they kind of come in and they'll try to get on the bed and say, daddy piano. And so we got to go out there and we play the piano, and it's definitely pretty hilarious. I had no concept that my little girls would be this much into music. And then my one little girl will play, and my other little girl will actually hold like something. It doesn't matter what it is, and try to sing into it, like they're trying to have like a tandem, like their first music group. And I'm like, you guys are 2 years old and you're already trying to put together this stuff. So we started watching like The Voice and American Idol, and So You Think You Can Dance and all these shows, and they're like completely fascinated by The Voice. They like sit there and they're like so excited to watch The Voice. And I mean, it's cute and it's super cool, and I really hope that they get into the music stuff. But it's yeah, Tom, thank you very much for the gifts. That was awesome. But so my long-winded stuff, but no, I think like the advent, and more importantly, understanding how to train and what's necessary. Tom made a great thing. Like, does your training fit your fitness goals or your performance goals? And, there's sometimes, and we all run into this, there's sometimes what I want to do and what I have time to do. Or more importantly, this is what I want to do, but this maybe is not what I'm physically able. I mean, I would love to snatch, clean, and jerk every day, but just based on some of the limitations in my knee and shoulder, I knew that doing the snatch, clean, and jerk and training Olympic movements and doing that level of training was just wrecking my shoulder and wrecking my knee. And I just, dude, physically, I can't wear out my shoulder anymore. So I've had to really be real smart and limit the overhead stuff and, use a little bit more dumbbells and use some other different positions for the overhead. And, I'll still pull heavy deadlifts and a lot of stuff. It's just, I'll do more dynamic stuff, and we do more of the deficit pulls just because the amount from all these years of the banging, I just can't really do the full variances of lifts anymore. So it's one of those things where I've had to make a deal with myself, and you're almost like, all right, I know what I want to do, but I know what I physically can do. And what's also interesting working with Tom is, he's imaged all my joints, and we've gone through and been doing stuff for a long time. And I can actually physically see the damage inside my joint. I'm like, shit, next time we go get something done or I get this imaged again, I don't want it to be worse and have him look at me and be like, well, what have you been doing? We've been doing all this stuff and the joint looks worse. And I'm like, well, I've been doing snatch, clean, and jerk and really loading this thing. I mean, we had a deal where I think we squatted. I mean, we did our 1RM program, and I think I squatted between 550 and 600 for like 18 days in a row. And I knew when we got done with that program, I was like, I'm sure my knee's going to look pretty wrecked next time I go out and have something done. So I think, training smart and really matching the performance goals and sleeping and eating and doing all those things are really the safeguards that ensure you to be able to train the way you want. And then hopefully you guys get there, you end up like Tom and I. And, Tom is actually the only person that I know that might be more physically broken than me. So, I mean, he's definitely more emotionally broken than me. So, I mean, Tom and I are friends. I'm like, he's a bigger emotional disaster, and he's physically. I mean, like Tom's got a knee similar to mine, and his hips got some issues, and his elbow, whereas it's my shoulder and knee. But what's interesting is, here's a guy that pulled 900 plus for reps, and now all of a sudden, we're talking about stuff, and he's like, well, dude, and we battle with this where he's like, all of a sudden I start training and like, dude, I want to put that weight on and I want to go. But I directly know that if I start loading the joints and doing what I really want to do, it's going to be counterproductive to the things that we've done to effectively heal ourselves. So I think what we're secretly waiting for is some magical chamber we can just go into and like zap you with a ray, and 10 minutes later I come out and everything's healthy. And then it'll give me the ability to just basically go back to the gym and completely destroy myself. And as long as I can keep getting into that like magical chamber, I'll be fine. But until we find that magical chamber, or Tom creates it, we're gonna have to be a lot smarter.
Yeah, one thing I'll interject with, John, is that how many times I hear people say they'll train by feel, and I don't know if you remember years ago the Weider instinctive training principle.
Yes.
So these guys go by how they feel, and one thing is that's absolutely clear is you can't feel damage in every part of your body. If I had known what was going on in my body, I totally would have changed how I was training and stuff like that. And I think by the time people start to feel something, it's pretty significant. Maybe there's not arthritis. It might be something else. Maybe there's just a lot of inflammation. But it's I don't think how you feel is a good way. And the reason why I just mentioned that is there's so many people that come in that we see here. That's the only objective variable, and it's really not objective. It's subjective, right? They're like, oh, I feel okay, I'm going to crush it. And one of the things I learned, or one of the areas that I got introduced to years ago as a Russian physiologist. I believe his name was Val Nasetkin, but I could be mistaken on the name. But he had this thing called a mega wave where he came up when the idea was and get a physiological assessment like right now and use that as the basis for planning your workout. Because at the time, overtraining, overreaching type protocols, were really popular. And the idea is we're going to push your body a little bit more than we can handle now, give you some taper period, maybe 1 to 3 weeks, depending upon what we're looking at.
You mean super compensation?
Yeah, at the end of that, you would super compensate at the end of that tapering phase. And so the problem with that is the magnitude of change is so large, it's very difficult to predict the end result. If I'm going to drive you into the ground and somehow hope you're going to be, 5 to 20% better than your lifetime best PR in something, weeks from now, there's too much potential for error or random variables to affect that outcome. And so from one of the things I liked about the protocol that Val was proposing is that you don't make as many mistakes because we're going to measure you now, and based on how you are right now, that determines what we're going to do for training. The limitation with that is that's a great way for one-on-one training. But now when you're dealing with groups of people, it's very difficult to pull it off. You can't really do that. You can't take 10 people and have each person take 20 minutes to see where they are, to work out.
Well, and also when you're dealing with that many people, I mean, we found people that, like you can put 100 people on the same workout plan, and you're going to have, 40 people in the middle that think it's the right. You're going to have, 10 people there that are going to be like, no, I need to do double that. And you're going to have, the other rest of the people that are like, this is way too much. And so, and you know this from dealing with different athletes. I mean, shit, Tom, you've tested just about every professional athlete I've ever known, and then some. I mean, like there are guys that work out 3 times a day, and there's guys that work out 3 times a week, and everybody gets plays at a high level, and it's just interesting when you start talking about these broad strokes, and and we run into this stuff all the time with our CrossFit Football Power Athlete stuff. Like, how do you design a program for the masses without, like you're saying, without seeing that person every day, without taking some daily metrics on recovery, without matching a diet. And it's something where you almost have to write a program towards the middle or maybe a little bit higher, and then kind of tell people, hey, this is what we want to do, but if it's too much, you're going to have to adjust it. You need to kind of have some changes. And I mean, it's definitely interesting. But I know that we did when I was in college, we used to do that stuff. Like we had the grip test, where we used to have to squeeze and it would measure a grip, it's called. And
a hand grip dynamometer.
Yeah, we would use that when we were we had a baseline for it. And if you came in and you were within 90% of your baseline, then you were we knew we were more recovered. I mean, you come in some days and you couldn't generate anything, and it was like 60%. And it was like, okay, well, I know I need to be a little bit smarter, and maybe I'm not going to have the same output. You come in one day and all of a sudden you're 10% over your best, then maybe it's time to go for the PR. But, and then even that stuff gets disproven because, there's been days where I've come in the gym and we've all done this where all of a sudden you think you're like, hey, man, I'm just going to come in and squat the bar. I'm just going to come in and do the bare minimum just to say I was here. And you start warming up and next thing you know, you set your lifetime best on a day where you didn't think you were going to do anything. So it's, I don't know. It's really hard to judge. And I think as a coach, and this is why, with the Russians, especially, and all the, Olympics, and you look at all these different athletes. They work one-on-one with a coach that works with them for years. And that coach knows those athletes front and back. They can come in and watch the way they walk in the door and know whether or not this is going to be a good day. And, that's part of the deal of being a coach.
Sure. Yeah, I was talking with someone yesterday about a buddy of mine, Tim McClellan. Over the years, the athletes that I've had the pleasure of working with that Tim was also coaching, we've seen some, freakish results. Guys gaining, significant amounts of muscle, guys getting really stronger or raising their level of their game. And so someone was asking me, how is it when you two guys work together, you get these crazy results with these guys and there's no, they're not taking drugs or anything. And my response is that, one of the things I observed about Tim is he really understands how to connect with the human that he's coaching. And one of the limitations for me is I've been trained my whole life how to measure stuff inside of people. So I'm connecting with people's blood cells. I'm connecting with their vitamin and mineral levels or their hormones, but I don't, connect with them as a human because I'm looking at all these variables.
You are one of the biggest, most, you are one of the biggest people person, or you're one of the biggest, people person I've ever met. I've never seen you not connect with people. So, you might be big in the lab, but dude, you forget, we've been out drinks. I've seen you run game on girls like nobody's business.
But we're talking about athletes and coaching right now, not my late night festivities there. So one of the things that what Tim would do, though, is he would really get to understand what motivates this person in a way that I haven't really seen a whole lot of people able to do. So it's almost like he knows what strings to pluck to get this guy or this woman to get that extra percentage out of them in training and stuff, that he pays attention enough to make sure that they're not like pushing it and stuff like that. What I was going is I think there's a psychological component there that oftentimes, we talk about training that maybe isn't really looked at or considered. You can have the best program in the world, but if your client doesn't believe in you or believe in what you're doing, right, they're going to be combative, resistant, they may not comply. So they're really not going to get the best results. But if you could, connect with them in a way where they understand and they buy into what you're saying, hey, I think this could help you and here's why, I think then that, there's one more variable that contributes to the overall effectiveness of what you're trying to accomplish.
Sure. So if you could give us one nugget of information that dramatically improves everybody's performance, like go back into like the Incledon Rolodex of all the studies. I remember one time we were talking and you had just downloaded like 47,000 studies on something and just gone through them in like 3 days. But what single most important thing, if somebody said to you, Tom, tell me right now, what's the single most important thing I can do to improve my performance?
So without knowing anything about the person in advance or something, I would say, I would go to something basic like either adequate food intake or vitamin and mineral testing. That would be one of the two things.
What about
and the reason why I say that
a fasted diet, we were talking about the intermittent fasting where you're having guys that are basically not eating for 18 hours and training in a fast state and talking about performance gains with it. I remember when we talked about it, you're like, there's no, the data doesn't support that.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say. Every study I've ever looked at, whether it's power athletes, guys looking to lift weights, guys looking for muscle hypertrophy, endurance. Fed conditions, you outperform fasted conditions. Now, in everyday, so outside of research, everyday world, people come in, we're talking to them. I have people all the time say, I think I play better or perform better or I train better when I'm fasted or when I don't, eat something. And I think part of that is they may have a reaction to food. That reaction is either a food allergy, a food hypersensitivity, or they have some type of microorganism that when they eat certain foods, the organism becomes active. And so then they feel uncomfortable. So the reason why they may feel better as an individual when they don't eat is because they're making the wrong food selection or wrong choice, that, there's a reaction that they're creating through lack of knowledge. They just don't know that this food is affecting them. If you eliminate, the microbiology aspect, if you eliminate the food reaction aspect, whether it's an allergy or hypersensitivity, proper nutrient timing is critical to maximize results from training. But, and one of the things, like all these guys that talk about intermittent fasting and stuff like that, when you have a problem, you could have a lot of potential solutions for a given problem in any field. Now, what is the best or most effective solution to that problem? When it comes to the human body, it's variable. I could suggest something to someone today, and based on what I know, it's a good solution for the current problem. But now the guy starts traveling. Now the guy decides, hey, I'm retiring from baseball and I'm going to become a triathlete. Decisions that we see people make all the time. Well, now they've changed the physiological environment. So the solution we had previously, it's no longer a good fit for their current problem. So in terms of our health, we have to remember, or our performance, the body is dynamic. Nothing works forever. And we just have to figure out, okay, how do we change up what we're doing? It's a basis for periodization, peaking for a contest or something. There's all kinds of, you don't do the same exact workout every day in a row and expect to magically get better. It's the same thing with, nutrition and maybe some other variables that could be manipulated in a way to get better results.
All right. And then what about, I remember years ago, you told me the story about hanging out with, was it Bill Kazmaier where you guys rolled into a Walmart and he started rolling frying pans?
Oh,
so,
yeah, that guy could.
So I was telling Denny in Playtech when I was asking him, I was like, dude, you got to ask Tom. Tom has, I have some pretty good stories, but Tom's got some really good stories about, so I'll let you tell that one, but there was some funny stuff like that.
Okay, so first, I was, we were in, I think, Spokane, Washington.
Spokane.
And it was an NSCA Spokane. Thank you. Because, so, when it comes to geography and time, I'm like the most ignorant guy on the planet.
And also with knowing who athletes are, I remember Tom called me once and he's like, I just got done working with this guy from the Yankees. I think they call him B-Rod or D-Rod and A-Rod. You're like, yeah. That's him. And then Tom's like, yeah, he's I think he's pretty famous, right? I was like, yeah, he's pretty kind of a pretty big name. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then that was the end of it. So go on about Spokane, Washington.
In my defense, you have to remember, I worked in a room with no windows for 2 years. Okay, it's all I'm going to say. I didn't get much outside exposure. So when we're in Spokane, Washington, and there's this NSCA conference. And at the time, I was doing strongman competitions, and Bill Kazmaier had retired. He'd been retired for many years at that point. But there was a couple of young guys, up-and-coming guys that were really good. So they were doing this thing where they had these dumbbells, and they were bending rebar, and they were breaking wood and stuff like that. So I had met Bill Kazmaier years earlier. I knew some of the other guys, so I was kind of hanging out with them. And what happened was I was sitting with a bunch of people in the audience, and then they had these two 180-pound dumbbells. And the deal was they wanted to get someone from the audience to lift them and kind of do like a farmer's walk for a certain distance. And then if that person goes, they were going to have one of the strongman competitors do it. Well, a couple of guys get up and no one can lift the dumbbells. I mean, basically it's like 360 pounds. And when the dumbbells are that low to the ground, it is harder than like a standard farmer's walk type apparatus. So no one was doing it. So I jump up out of the audience. I grab the dumbbells and I run down the field. So Bill's emceeing this and he's like, who? He goes, Tom, that don't count. Put them back. So we put the dumbbells back because, quote unquote, I was a competitor, so I should not have been, lifting the dumbbells. It was only for the other people. So then I started hanging out with these guys. So they had this girl punch through this wood. And it was kind of impressive. I was like, damn, she was like a tiny girl. Well, the wood was designed in a way that it would crack easy. So now, because I messed with them by running with the dumbbells, Bill's going to play this joke on me. So he gets this wood that isn't as easy to crack or break through. And I don't know how to throw a punch. I was never a fighter or anything like that. It's like, well, you hit it like this, it'll break. Trust me. So now I go and I got to punch this thing. Well, I break it, but I wind up chipping a piece of a knuckle. So now I'm kind of pissed. So they're feeling bad. So like, all right, we're going to go out tonight. So we wind up going out to this bar. And so basically I walk through, no one says anything. I'm not like that much of a physically impressive type of guy. But now I got this strongman competitor behind me. The kid's like 6'7" or 6'6". And the guy's like, damn. Then this other guy comes on. He's like same height, but bigger. And the guy's like, oh, shit. And then behind, like the fourth guy behind is Bill Kazmaier. So when Bill walks through, the guy's like, what the fuck? Like Bill's head was so big. It was intimidating, like when he would walk through. So we're talking, drinking some beers. And Bill that day had rolled a frying pan. And I have never done that. I always wanted to learn how to do it. So the next day we went out and I don't know what we were grabbing. I don't know if it was Walmart or a supermarket. But we grabbed some stuff, and there's all these frying pans just hanging there. And so we head over, and I'm trying to do it, and I can't roll a frying pan. Like, it's like you literally roll it up like a piece of paper. So Bill is showing me in the middle of the store, here's how you position it, and here's how you light it up, and here's how you do it. And then after that, I could roll a frying pan. So that was kind of the story. It was it'd be one of those things, if you walk by and you saw these guys standing in the aisle rolling frying pans, you're like, what is wrong with these guys? Plus, if you saw how big Bill was, it would be even more comical.
Bill Kazmaier is probably one of the most physically impressive people I've ever seen in my life. The thing that tripped me out is I couldn't believe how thick his wrist was. Like I remember like looking at his hand, and like his wrist was kind of like as thick as like where his I guess it was like where the thumb connects to the rest of the hand. Like I guess that's second knuckle down. Like everybody else is their hand curves in. Like Kaz's hand just went like into forearm. Like it was like knuckle for wrist. And I remember like looking at his wrist and like the thickness of his wrist compared to his elbow. They were like, it was like the same. And I'm like, I just couldn't, like, it just was one of those things where I was like, dude, this guy is like a different version of the Homo sapien. I just remember when I saw him, I was like, dude, this is the biggest human. And he was retired and an older guy, and you still see him in the World's Strongest Man when he's doing the announcing, and he's still fucking huge. The yoke on his neck, I mean, his traps, I mean, he's still a massive dude. I remember Zangus, Kaz was on the Thompson powerlifting team that Zangus coached. And, the stories of him and, those guys and, Odie Wilson and Tom knows all these guys too, was just legendary. I mean, these guys were just, I can't remember the other guy,
John Paul Sigmas was a guy from Iceland, right? Yeah. They had won 4 of them, and then he had some heart problem and passed away. Yeah.
I mean, they're just, what was the name of the other guy? Bob Young. He was on Zangus's team too. I mean, those guys are just massive men, big dudes.
Doug Young?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Doug. Yeah, well, Bob Young was his brother.
No, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Doug something. I don't know if it was Young or.
Well, no, it was Doug Young was the power lifter, and his brother Bob Young played in the NFL.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know Kazmaier. He went to Burlington High School, which is maybe 80 miles north from here. So my parents live in a town called Lake Geneva. It's maybe 20 minutes from Burlington. Just some of like the gossip from the area about Bill Kazmaier. He set all these high school records in powerlifting and stuff, but what always I thought was interesting was that he tried out for the Packers and he didn't make the team. And I couldn't understand, or I can't understand how a man that massive and strong couldn't make the NFL team. You know, he could. I can't imagine it's not that he couldn't play it or he wasn't strong enough to play it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting, and we talk about this quite often. Football's just not a game of strength. I mean, it's just not a game. It's interesting. I mean, we had what's his name, Brock
Lesnar.
Yeah, Lesnar, you know, who got to try out with the Vikings. And we went up there and scrimmaged against him, and he had no fucking concept of how to play football. I mean, I remember we lined up in one-on-one drills, and we're just killing this dude. And when we went out on the field and actually got to play, I mean, our third string, our backups were fucking raping this guy.
I can imagine, like, Brock Lesnar, I mean, he probably he's big for UFC standards or when he was in the UFC, but, I mean, if he'd lined up against you guys, you know, NFL lineman 300 plus. I mean, he was just tiny then.
Yeah, he was probably in like the 260s, and they were trying to play him as a down tackle. And the problem is, you know, you're going in, and like I remember, you know, for me, I would think I was in my 6th or 7th year, so I'm, you know, 30 years old, 300 plus pounds, and this is what I do for a living. And I remember lining up in my stance and like literally like coming off the ball, and his first move was straight up, and he tried to like grapple me around the side of like around the shoulder. And, you know, the last thing you want to ever do is basically stand up and give me your chest, because I remember putting my helmet through his chin, and literally the first thing it hit was the back of his head on the ground. And like, you know, the coach comes running over at him, and he's like, dude, you can't stand straight up. He goes, you know, you're not going to grab these guys around the shoulders and wrestle them. I mean, you know, dude, like the last thing you do is you let me get my hands inside, let me lift you off the ground. And then, some one-on-one pass rushed up, same thing, set back. He stood straight up, and, you know, like just that, not that, you know, that physical field awareness of not keeping your knees bent and not keeping in that position, like not keeping that good athletic position was, you know, that it's hard to teach somebody that doesn't come from this background to do it. And, you know, you know, and I don't know how big he was when he wrestled. I didn't know if he had to clean up to come to the NFL. I don't know anything about it, but he just wasn't the same beast that we had seen in terms of some other things, you know.
But what about like Kazmaier? I mean, you would think that he would be able to make up for any kind of deficiency he had in football technique just by his pure freaking strength. No,
I'm telling you, man, it's two different things. But you know, I mean, it's cool. So, are you guys? All right. How you guys doing? We looking like we're about done?
I say that's about it. We're out. We went way over our time, but that's all right.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up. Thanks, Tom, for having us.
Tom, thanks for joining us on the show. It's been great.
Tom,
thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys, and look forward if we could do this again. And cool.
Hey, Tom, can you give me an email where they can get a hold of you and an address on the web address?
So probably the best thing to do would go to either humanhealthspecialist.com if people have like a health concern, or humanperformancespecialist.com if they're, you know, interested more in performance and stuff like that.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. You have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Tom.
See you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah. See you, man.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yep.